Thunderstorms precipitate lightning strikes over a wide area and create an abundance of static electricity in the air that can create a hazardous condition during fuel transfer operations. The decision to suspend fuel operations during thunderstorm activity is based upon experience and assessing storm criteria, such as direction of travel, distance from the airport, and intensity. As a general rule, fueling operations should not be conducted when a thunderstorm is within 5 miles of the airport. Your supervisor will review specific thunderstorm procedures at your operation. You can estimate the distance to the lightning by doing some simple math. Sound travels about 1/5 of a mile per second. Count the number of seconds from the lightning flash to the sound of the thunder and divide this number by 5. This gives the rough distance in miles. Click the Try It button and perform the calculation yourself when you see the lightning flash. The answer will appear when the thunder is heard. Exercising care during fuel receiving and loading operations can minimize fire risk. This care begins with ensuring all unauthorized personnel are restricted from the fuel receiving and loading areas by appropriate fencing. Fences must be in good repair and all gates locked to prevent entry to the facility. Signage must include no smoking and flammable signs displayed in prominent, high-visibility locations around each side of the fence at the fuel farm facility. You must also maintain a clean fuel farm to prevent accumulation of weeds or other materials that could pose an ignition risk. Properly bond all vehicles, including delivery tankers, before beginning any receiving or loading operation. This eliminates the static electricity potential caused by movement of fuel through fuel hoses. During receiving or loading procedures, never override or bypass the safety features of the Deadman Fuel Flow Control feature. The Deadman switch and emergency shutoff valve it controls is your main protection against fuel spills if a hose should rupture. All hoses, nozzles, and outflow connectors must be controlled by a Deadman Fuel Flow Control feature that is capable of stopping the flow of fuel with one physical movement. Fuel spills can happen without notice and pose great risk to personnel and property. Your role is to follow procedures that will minimize the potential for fire and maximize the level of safety for you and others involved. You must first stop the flow of fuel to limit the size of the spill, and then, as practical, contain the spill. It is important to remember fuel spill handling procedures can vary depending on the size of the spill, the type of flammable or combustible liquid involved, the arrangement of equipment at the spill site, the occupancy of the aircraft, and the availability of emergency equipment and personnel. Let's look at minimizing potential fire risks during a fuel spill in more detail. When a spill occurs, your first reaction must be to determine the source and stop the flow of fuel, thereby limiting the size of the spill. In the case of a refueling vehicle, close the emergency shutoff valve immediately. If the spill cannot be stopped because of a component failure, your action should be directed at minimizing risk to personnel and property. Fire risk is minimized through your prompt actions. Call for assistance by notifying your supervisor and airport fire authority as soon as practical. Remember to post an extinguisher a safe distance upwind from the spill so that it is available if the need arises. Beyond the obvious fire hazard, spills also pose an environmental hazard. If the spill involves your refueler, do not remove it. If the engine is shut off, do not start it. If the engine is running, leave it running. Ignition of the spill is more likely to occur from engines backfiring during startup or shutdown. This applies to all electrical equipment as well. Do not start or turn off any equipment in or near the spill. Position warning cones around the perimeter of the spill to prevent vehicles from entering the spill area, and direct any approaching vehicles away from the hazard area. If you are properly trained and have the proper equipment, you may start to clean up the spill. If you do not have the appropriate equipment, stand by your fire extinguisher and direct traffic from the area. The fire authority has the proper equipment and personnel to deal with the situation safely. Appropriate spill kits must be available on each refueler, and your operation should also have a spill recovery cart or other vehicle available for various types of spills. For very large spills, your supervisor will instruct you regarding the appropriate agencies and response organizations to contact for assistance. Fuel spills pose a very real threat to safety. Therefore, remember these 3 key steps. Stop the flow of fuel. Secure the area until the fire department arrives. And direct traffic away from the area.